Welcome to the deep dive. There's this real tug of war inside us, isn't there?
Mhm.
This deep yearning for like wide open freedom, but it clashes with something else. Something that feels almost like a secret comfort in being controlled, or at least guided.
Yeah, being told what to do sometimes.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, why might we, deep down actually enjoy a bit of that control even while we're so loudly championing independence?
It's a huge paradox, really, a central one for humans. We're just constantly swimming in messages about self-reliance, autonomy, be your own boss, all that.
Oh, absolutely.
But then if you really look closely, you start seeing these subtle, kind of invisible structures all around, gently nudging our choices.
Like what?
Well, think about your social media feed. It feels like this vast ocean of information, right? Limitless possibilities.
Yeah, total freedom to just explore whatever catches my eye.
That's the feeling, yeah. But behind the curtain, algorithms are working away, curating everything you see, deciding what you're most likely to click on, to engage with. So, in a way, the menu's already kind of been picked out for you. It really makes you question, well, how free are we actually in that kind of setup?
It really does make you pause. It's
Yeah.
like we're moving around inside these walls,
Yeah.
maybe, but the walls are sort of hidden.
Carefully constructed boundaries.
But this feeling, this sense that maybe our choices aren't like 100% our own,
Right.
it points to something deeper,
Yeah.
right? What's really driving this weird dance between wanting freedom and, well, leaning towards being told what to do?
Okay, so let's dig into that contradiction. You see it everywhere in daily life. We hold freedom, self-determination up on this pedestal, especially now in the modern world.
For sure. It's like fundamental to how we think about ourselves.
Right, but then watch people. Think about someone who argues really passionately for, say, flexible work hours, freedom to manage their own time.
Okay.
And then when they finally get that flexibility, what do they often do? They impose these incredibly rigid routines on themselves, almost copying the very structure they wanted to escape.
Huh. I've seen that.
Or, think about us as consumers. We're constantly told, buy this product, buy this car, this gadget. It'll set you free. Liberation.
Right, the promise of freedom through ownership.
Exactly. We believe we're buying freedom, but really, often we're just aligning ourselves with social trends, following unspoken rules about status, about belonging.
Wow, that's a really sharp point. We idealize breaking free, but then we kind of snap back into these patterns.
Yeah.
So the big question is still nagging. Why? Why do we keep going back to structure, to something less than, total freedom?
Well, this is where a certain way of looking at it offers a pretty compelling angle. Think about this possibility. What if there's an unconscious longing for submission?
Whoa, that sounds almost wrong, doesn't it, in our culture? We value independence so much.
It definitely cuts against the grain, yeah. But think about civilization itself, society, basically. How is it built?
Well, rules, laws,
Yeah.
cooperation.
Right, but on what foundation? It's built on managing our, let's say, primal instincts, our raw urges, aggression, unchecked desires. They don't really work well if everyone's living together.
Chaos, basically.
Pretty much. So civilization is kind of a trade-off, you could say. We get security, social order, but the price is that we collectively agree to, well, put a lid on some of those primal parts of ourselves. And that basic deal creates this constant tension with wanting absolute freedom.
Okay, hold on. So you're saying that just to have any kind of organized society, we have to repress some fundamental drives.
That's the idea. The very act of building a society requires some control over those raw impulses. We're not really naturally built for absolute total freedom because, frankly, our instincts, if just let loose, could tear everything apart.
Right.
So instead, we're always navigating this tension between our inner world, our desires, and the external demands, the rules of the group.
So are we just fundamentally bad at being completely free? Is it almost like unnatural for us, given that conflict?
Maybe not bad at it or unsuited, but certainly shaped by that core conflict. Think about the forces inside us. You've got what Freud called the id. That's the pool of primal urges.
Okay.
Then there's the superego. That's the internalized voice of society, the rules, morality, your conscience.
Right, the shoulds and shouldn'ts.
Exactly. And caught right in the middle is the ego, trying its best to mediate this constant internal battle. And often, a way the ego keeps things stable, keeps us feeling okay, is through a degree of submission. Submitting to external rules or even our own internalized ones, just to find some inner peace.
So this tendency towards submission, It's not just society pushing it on us. You're saying it might actually be something we kind of want on some level.
Yes, precisely. Think about all the unspoken rules, waiting your turn in line, basic manners. These aren't always policed by someone standing over you,
Yeah.
really.
But do that mostly.
We internalize them, and they provide a framework, right? Predictability. It might feel like a constraint sometimes, sure, but it also offers security, a feeling you belong to this shared system. Imagine if every single interaction had to be negotiated from scratch. It would be exhausting, maybe even terrifying.
There's a weird logic to that. The comfort of knowing the lines, even if you bump up against them. But doesn't that comfort cost us something huge?
Yeah.
Like our real autonomy, our genuine self.
Look, civilization always demands sacrifice. Always. To live together, we have to give up certain bits of our individual nature. And yeah, that can feel oppressive sometimes, no question. But it's also the foundation for everything: collective culture, community, and paradoxically, the very act of giving something up, of renouncing that bit of freedom, can actually feel comforting. It lifts the burden of constant, absolute individual choice and responsibility.
You mentioned morality before.
Yeah.
That it's not just about rules, but something more complex.
Yeah. Morality, on the surface, it looks like a list of rules to keep us safe and playing nicely together. Don't steal, don't hurt people, be honest. Seems straightforward. Basic stuff for society to work.
Right, the golden rule kind of thing.
But if you dig a bit deeper, morality is also this incredibly powerful way to channel our more, let's say, destructive impulses.
How so?
Take aggression. Raw aggression is just violence, chaos. But morality and the social structures that come with it can redirect that energy, channel it into acceptable outlets, like competition in sports or fierce intellectual debate. This idea of sublimation, taking those raw urges and transforming them into something socially acceptable, even valuable. Even something as basic as sexual desire gets heavily shaped, regulated by cultural norms, by moral codes.
So what we often think of as just being a good person, having moral virtue. It's actually, in a way, a really sophisticated kind of social control, a way to manage those primal bits.
That's a big part of it, yes. Cultures develop these incredibly intricate systems, rituals, traditions, beliefs, specifically to manage and channel these powerful desires. What we see as virtue is often the end result of these deep, ingrained cultural controls working on us.
That makes me think about authority figures. Parents, leaders, institutions. How do they plug into this desire for control, maybe even for submitting?
Authority figures, yeah, they often act like external versions of that internalized voice of rules, the superego, but writ large.
Oh, okay.
So when we obey them, it's not just about, doing what we're told on the surface. Deeper down, we're often reinforcing our own internal psychological structure. We're sort of reaffirming the boundaries we've already internalized about what's okay and what's not. Remember, the superego is that inner voice of rules. Authority figures just often echo it back to us, louder.
Maybe that helps explain why you see these patterns in history. Revolutions start, aiming for total liberation, but then they often end up creating new kinds of control, new authorities.
It's a depressingly common cycle, isn't it? The desire for freedom is incredibly strong, obviously, but so is this underlying human need for structure, for clarity. Even if we complain about authority, even if we resist it, there's often this unconscious pull, this craving for someone to just be in charge, especially when things feel chaotic or uncertain.
So it's really this ambivalence, this push and pull.
Yeah.
We want freedom, but we're also kind of scared of what comes with it.
Exactly that. Ambivalence is key. We yearn for self-expression, authenticity, living our life. But that freedom, it comes with the full weight of responsibility, the scariness of the unknown, the potential for feeling totally alone.
Yeah.
So submission in that light can look like, a way to lighten that load. If you yield to authority, you can tell yourself, consciously or not, okay, I don't have to figure all this out myself. Someone else is steering the ship.
It's almost like a coping mechanism then, to handle the anxiety that comes with real autonomy.
Precisely. And listen, that's not automatically a sign of weakness. It can be a really deep survival instinct. Making constant high-stakes decisions with no safety net, that's exhausting, can be overwhelming. So submitting to existing structures can feel safer, more predictable.
Religion and politics. They seem like prime examples of systems that tap right into this.
Oh, absolutely. Religion often gives you this whole package, doesn't it? Answers to the big questions, moral guidance, community.
A framework for everything.
Exactly. But it also usually asks for adherence, to Doctrines, commandments, hierarchies, it's a kind of bargain. Give up some autonomy, get meaning and order in return.
And political systems too, right? Even democracies.
Right.
We rely on laws, rules, elected officials, structures that are supposed to serve us, but we still have to, submit to their authority to make it work.
Totally. And think about times of crisis. What happens? Often there's this pull towards stronger leadership, more central control. People become more willing to trade certain freedoms for the promise of stability, of security. History is full of examples where populations got behind strongman figures during scary times.
It all keeps coming back to this core tension, this push-pull. Okay, let's go a bit deeper into the real bedrock of our psychology. Freud talked about these two fundamental drives, right? Eros and Thanatos.
Yes, Eros, the life instinct, drives for connection, creation, love. And Thanatos, the death instinct, aggression, destruction, the pull towards dissolution.
So how do those big forces connect to this whole freedom versus submission thing?
Well, submission might seem like it's just about suppressing things, being controlled from outside. But think about Thanatos, that aggressive drive. When someone submits to a really structured system, let's say the military, as a classic example, what happens?
And it's hence discipline, following orders.
Right. Individual aggression gets channeled, redirected towards a collective goal. That intense training, breaking down the individual ego, you could see that as a kind of sublimation of Thanatos, transforming that destructive potential into loyalty, duty, even things considered honorable within that group. It finds an outlet, but a controlled one.
Okay, so even our destructive side finds a place within systems of submission. But what about Eros, the life force, love, connection? How does that fit with submitting?
Well, even Eros, that drive for life and love, it actually requires a kind of submission, too. Think about falling in love, building a real relationship.
Vulnerability.
Exactly, vulnerability. To truly connect, you have to surrender some of your autonomy, right? You have to compromise. You open yourself up to getting hurt. It's a form of submission, in a way, but one that can lead to incredible fulfillment and creativity, too. The artistic process often involves this deep submission to the craft itself. An artist has to master techniques, follow forms sometimes, channel inspiration through rigorous discipline. It's like serving something bigger than your own ego.
That's counterintuitive, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Seeing love and creativity as needing a kind of surrender.
Yeah.
You also mentioned earlier how that internalized rulebook, the superego, isn't just individual, it works on a cultural level too.
Right. That inner voice of morality we develop as kids, it gets mirrored and amplified across whole cultures. Think about, say, the massive influence of monotheistic religions in shaping Western civilization.
Okay.
They often stress strict moral codes, right?
Right.
And the importance of obedience to a higher power to achieve salvation or whatever the goal is. That reinforces this deep cultural idea that submitting to authority, divine or earthly, is the right path, the way to get what you ultimately want.
So these big cultural stories, these ingrained beliefs, they're constantly programming us in a way, shaping our ideas of right and wrong, what's acceptable.
Constantly. And it's often invisible. It seeps into everything, our schools, our laws, the media we consume. They all subtly reinforce certain values, certain expectations. They give us these internalized scripts for how to think and behave, often without us even realizing it's happening.
And that leads us to guilt. That feeling we get when we step out of line.
Guilt is the feedback mechanism, isn't it? It pops up when we break those internalized rules, when we go against the superego's demands. It's a powerful force pushing us back into line with what society expects. And it's not just personal, it's crucial for holding society together. Feeling guilty means we recognize how our actions affect others.
But guilt can also be incredibly damaging, right? It can mess people up.
Oh, absolutely. When it becomes excessive or totally irrational, it fuels neurosis, anxiety, even self-destruction. And on a bigger scale, think about collective guilt, unresolved guilt from historical wrongs like slavery or major wars. It can create these cycles of shame and resentment that poison societies for generations.
So submission looks like a way out of that, maybe? Relief from guilt, from uncertainty, but then it risks just letting bad things happen, becoming complacent.
Yeah.
How do you find the balance?
The key, maybe, comes back to that idea of sublimation, finding ways to channel those primal energies, aggression, desire, into things that are both personally meaningful and socially constructive.
Like sports again, or art.
Or scientific discovery, or building a business, or community organizing. Finding outlets where that energy gets directed constructively. That lets us navigate the tension without falling completely into either extreme total chaos or just blind obedience.
And even in fields like science and art, which seem super structured,
Hmm.
there's this interesting tension between following the rules and breaking new ground.
Exactly. Big scientific leaps often happen because someone meticulously followed the existing methods, built on what came before, but it's also within that structured process that sometimes, boom, a whole new way of seeing things emerges, a paradigm shift.
Right.
Same with art movements. They often grow out of a deep knowledge of tradition. Innovation comes from consciously pushing against or twisting or subverting those established forms.
Now, shifting this to today, the digital age,
Mhm.
it feels like this whole dynamic is on steroids.
It really does. We are constantly submitting in the digital world, submitting to algorithms that decide what news we see, what products are advertised to us, submitting to social media platforms that dictate how we interact, submitting to data analytics that predict and maybe even shape our future behavior. It's a type of control that often feels completely invisible, but its impact is massive.
And there's that tricky illusion of it being democratic, right? Like we're all just freely participating. But underneath, these hidden structures are nudging us constantly.
It's this very decentralized kind of power, and the twist is we're both the subjects and the contributors. Every click, every like, every bit of data we share, it all feeds back into the machine, making it better at shaping our experience, maybe even our desires.
Wow. So how do we even start to push back? How do we reclaim any real agency in that kind of environment?
Awareness has to be the first step. Just recognizing these mechanisms are there, seeing how they work. That lets us be more conscious about the information we take in, more deliberate about how we interact online.
So less passive scrolling, more active choosing.
Something like that. Actively curating your feeds, maybe? Seeking out different viewpoints? Critically questioning the narratives being pushed at you?
It sounds like trying to turn that automatic reflexive submission into something more like a conscious choice.
Exactly right. It takes effort. It means being willing to question the easy answers, the dominant stories, to ask, where is this feeling of guilt really coming from? To try and actively shape the digital spaces we're in instead of just letting them shape us.
Which brings us back to that kind of unsettling question. Is real total freedom even possible? Or is it, like you hinted at before, maybe just an illusion we like to believe in?
Well, the Freudian view certainly pushes towards that conclusion, the idea that civilization itself is this fragile deal we make. We repress our deep drives in order to live together. The very structures we build to protect ourselves also inevitably box us in. So yeah, in that sense, maybe absolute unbound freedom is a kind of mirage.
This is pretty sobering. So this feeling of being controlled, it's not necessarily a flaw, but maybe just part of the human package deal.
You could put it that way. It likely stems from a really deep need for order, for things to make sense, for safety in a world that often feels chaotic and complex. It's the comfort you get from certainty, even if that certainty comes with fences around it.
And that control, that direction, isn't just coming from outside, it's inside too, right? That inner critic, the superego, always watching, always judging.
Oh, absolutely. The superego is that relentless inner voice. It shapes our thoughts, our feelings. It dishes out guilt and anxiety whenever we stray from its standards, which are often completely unrealistic anyway. It's this powerful internal force that we carry around, and it definitely influences our desire for external structures that kind of match its demands.
So is there any real way out of this tangled web of internal and external control?
Freud's perspective would suggest maybe not a complete escape. These are fundamental tensions baked into being human. They're not really problems you can solve and be done with. They're more like dynamics you need to understand, become aware of, and learn to manage. The goal isn't necessarily escape, which might be impossible, but gaining clarity about how powerfully they influence us.
And maybe it's in that tension, in that constant back and forth between wanting freedom and dealing with constraints.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where creativity comes from, innovation.
I think that's absolutely right. The struggle against limits, the drive to question authority, the effort to push beyond what's already known, that's so often the engine for breakthroughs in art, philosophy, science. Meaning often comes not from finding the final answer, but from staying in the process of questioning, of struggling.
And in our digital world now, where these forces are everywhere and often hidden, it feels like we're deeply complicit in building the very systems that control us.
We are undeniably co-creators. Every time we engage online, every piece of data we offer up, it helps build the architecture of this digital authority. In a very real sense, we are collectively constructing the systems that then turn around and shape our experiences, maybe even shape our wants and desires.
So civilization, whether it's ancient or digital, just demands this constant vigilance, this ongoing negotiation between wanting to be free and perhaps surprisingly, sometimes wanting or needing to submit.
It seems so. It requires us to keep questioning authority, the ones outside us and the one inside our heads, but also at the same time recognizing that we need each other. We need some structure, some shared understanding to function at all. Both resisting and submitting in different ways seem to be inseparable parts of being human.
If someone listening wants to navigate this better in their own life, what's a practical takeaway?
I think it starts with really honest self-reflection. Look at those times in your own life when you choose to submit willingly. And ask yourself with real curiosity, why? What's the real motivation here? Is it a considered choice, or is it more about seeking comfort? Getting validation? Maybe avoiding the fear that comes with total uncertainty. Just getting clear on those hidden drivers. It's absolutely crucial.
So in the end, we're kind of left with this big paradox. The more we try to understand ourselves and all these complex forces shaping us, the less simple the answers become.
That seems to be the case. The human mind is incredibly complex, full of contradictions, and civilization is just this massive, ongoing experiment in trying to manage all those inherent tensions. Maybe real freedom isn't about having no constraints at all. Maybe it's about being consciously, critically aware of the constraints we live within, and then making deliberate, thoughtful choices about which ones we accept, which ones we challenge, and how we engage with them.
That is a profoundly thought-provoking place to end. It really makes you think, are you, listening right now, submitting in some way? And if you are, to what? Or maybe to whom? Thank you. This has been a genuinely deep exploration.
It was my pleasure. A fascinating topic.
And that wraps up our deep dive today. We've journeyed through this really complex, often paradoxical relationship we have with freedom and control, looking at it mainly through that Freudian lens. We touched on unconscious desires, how civilization itself relies on a kind of repression, the power of that inner critic, the superego, and even how those big life and death instincts, Eros and Thanatos, play into this whole dynamic. We really hope that starting to unpack these ideas gives you, the listener, maybe a bit more self-awareness, maybe helps you make more conscious choices about the structures, the authorities, the expectations you engage with every day. As you go about your day, we really encourage you to keep thinking about your own relationship with submission and freedom. It's a conversation that's always happening inside each of us.